I'm at school, that's why I'm not reading this, people. Yeah, I'm trying to get it to load and read. I don't know why it won't.
The first date. The neon sign of Mickey's Diner buzzed a friendly, old-fashioned hello into the humid evening. A tiny island of warmth on a busy avenue. Inside, the booths were vinyl, and the jukebox played a soft, familiar tune that wrapped around the clink of coffee cups and the low murmur of conversation. Peter Parker smoothed his hair with shaking fingers and checked the strap of his camera out of habit, because old habits were hard to break, then swallowed and glanced across the diner toward the door. When Gwen Stacy walked in,
Cool, I don't know why I don't want to read for some weird reason now, people, but it's being like dumb.
When Gwen Stacy walked in, the whole world seemed to fold politely around
But
her.
I can't read right now, so I'm doing.
Her hair fell in a careful halo,
stuff.
her smile was effortless, and she moved like someone who had not yet learned to be guarded against disappointment. Peter felt the old rush in his chest that always arrived when he saw her, equal parts certainty and terror. He stood up, knocking his knee against the booth as he did, and managed a lopsided grin that Gwen returned with a laugh that chased his nerves away. They were teenagers in a diner, nothing more and everything more, two people who liked each other and didn't yet know how to speak the full measure of what that meant. They ordered milkshakes and shared fries, traded jokes about school and exams, and Peter, who could talk for hours about photos or quantum mechanics or the oddities of web fluid viscosity, kept his words small and gentle, letting Gwen steer the conversation. He loved the way she listened, the way her eyebrows lifted at some small observation, the way she made him feel less hurried, less broken. "How's Drive? Connor's doing?" Gwen asked, genuinely curious, and Peter found himself surprised at how quickly he answered. "He's good. In the lab most of the time. He's got this quiet strength, you know. He teaches like he believes in second chances." He talked about Kurt Connors not as a hero returned but as a man trying to be whole, and Gwen's eyes softened. She told him about classes and the paper she was writing on Renaissance art, mentioning, by accident, a line that made Peter laugh and worry in the same breath. They traded confidence with the easy rhythm of two people getting to know each other. Peter's laugh came easier than it had in months, and when Gwen reached across the table to tuck a loose curl behind his ear, he forgot to be careful and felt the pulse at his temple hammer like a fist. Everything about the date felt improbable and true. They left the diner and walked under a string of streetlights that made the puddles glitter. They lingered on a corner, reluctant to end the moment. Peter wanted to tell her everything, about Uncle Ben's words that sat heavy in his chest, about the suit folded and hidden in his closet, about the nights when the city needed something that looked like hope, but he also wanted to protect her from the edges of the life he led. He chose the safe, ordinary thing. "I had a good time," he said instead, voice small and honest. Gwen smiled, the moonlight catching a corner of her cheek. "Me too, Peter." She placed a hand on his arm for a heartbeat and then, with the same casual grace that had carried them through the evening, she said goodnight and walked away, leaving Peter standing in the quiet glow of the sidewalk. He watched her go until she disappeared into a crowd of other lives, and then he turned and jogged home with a grin he tried to keep from slipping into legend. He didn't know, of course, that a very different conversation was beginning across town, in a building that cast a deep, corporate shadow over the East River. Fisk Tower rose like a muscle-bound monument of glass and marble, and inside its airy offices the city felt smaller, as if everything were a component in a machine designed to generate control and profit. Wilson Fisk sat behind a desk the size of a dining table, his hands folded like curtains around his knuckles. He filled the room without needing to stand, an immovable presence in a room that radiated power. Mac Gargan closed the door quietly behind him and locked it out of habit rather than necessity. He didn't bother with pleasantries. He'd come here because Jameson's check had bought him something more important than loyalty, a foot in the door with a man who could pay X100 for results. He set a thin leather folder on Fisk's desk and slid it open. Inside, the blueprint lay flat. Clean, technical lines that sketched a carapace of armor, a segmented tail, a compact power unit, and the anatomical adjustments that would let a man move like an insect but hit like a freight train. Fisk's face, normally a mask of measured calm, creased just enough. Did that idiot Jameson actually give you the money? He asked in the blunt way of a man who understood transactions as truths. He wanted to hear the yes. He wanted to know that someone else had bought into the plan so the burden of risk would be shared, or at least that someone else would take the fall if things went wrong. Yes, Mac said. The single word came out like a promise and a threat. He wrote the check. You wanted me to be direct, Mr. Fisk. You gave me what I asked for. Fisk steepled his fingers for a heartbeat, then nodded toward the diagrams. Mac leaned forward, voice dropping into the kind of low timbre that doesn't ask permission. This is the prototype. Scorpion suit. Armor built to take a beating, claws and tail reinforced with a compact kinetic unit. Think of it like a stinger that punches through anything the city throws at it. We build this, we let me loose, and I'll show him, Spider-Man, that not all animals are the same. Fisk's interest was a hand on a prayer. You want to fight him. I want to show him what an animal does when cornered, Mac said, heat under his words. I want to be poison to his heart. I want him to understand what fear actually is. Not the show he puts on swinging through the air, real fear. The kind that comes when you can't hide behind a mask or webbing. He tapped the blueprint with a blunt finger. You fund the suit, give me the go-ahead, and I'll make sure Spider-Man stops being a problem for your operations. There was a cadence to Mac's certainty that left no room for moral pause, and Fisk listened like a man harvesting a path that had always been intended. If I do this, if I sign off, will it kill him? Fisk asked, his voice steady because the question was a business one, and for Fisk, business was always factual. Mac's smile was cold and sure. Yes, definitely. There will be no coming back from a hit like that. The suit will make sure of it. He folded his hands on the blueprint as though closing a book. Fisk watched him for a long moment, the city thrumming below as if the world were continuing without the weight of their choices. The man in the chair inhaled the controlled breath of someone used to deciding other people's fates. He could feel the scales tilting toward a new order, one where his interests would never be threatened by a masked teenager with too much conscience and not enough sense. Good, Fisk said finally. Proceed. Mac left Fisk Tower with a lighter step than he'd had when he walked in. The check from Jameson burned in his coat like kindling and the blueprint burned brighter, a map to a destiny he planned to make personal. In the elevator, his reflection in the steel doors looked like someone already wearing the suit, wrapped in armor, tail arched, eyes narrowed to kill or be killed. The thrill of that image moved through him like electricity. Back on the sidewalk under the diner's neon, Peter made his way home with his chest full of small, ordinary joy, Gwen's laugh, the comfort of a shared milkshake, a hand brushed against his sleeve, and he did not yet know the shapes being carved in laboratories and private rooms. He did not yet know that the city's shadows were gathering teeth and wiring, that men were spending money to become monsters, or that his simple decision to keep a promise would force him to stand against things other people would rather forget. He reached his apartment building and paused to look up at the night. The stars were small in the smog-tinted sky, but for a second he felt like the luckiest, loneliest person in New York. He thought of Aunt May asleep in the next room, of Uncle Ben's lingering voice, of the unseen and uncelebrated moments where one person had to choose right over easy. He smiled, bitter and brave. Across the city, in rooms with different views but the same intent, plans moved forward. Engineers put heat under metal casings. A tailor sketched linework for a suit that would pry at Spider-Man's edges. Men with names like Gargan practiced snarls in empty mirrors and counted out the ways they would end a young hero. And somewhere in the quiet hum of Fisk Tower, the businessman in white sat back and allowed himself the small luxury of certainty. He had never liked Spider-Man. Now he would make sure the boy's story had an ending Fisk approved of. The night closed over the city like a clean fist, and as the lights blinked off and then on again across the skyline, the narrative moved, inevitable, merciless, toward the moment of collision. To be continued in Spectacular Spider-Man #1 *.